Well, looky what we have here.
You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
I hate Damon Lindelof. I just can't. I hate him. I hate what he's done to pop culture. I hate that we've changed our expectations because of him. And that's a bold statement, Jeff. Yes, it is. As I drive to pick up Josie again, it's a bold statement to say, I hate Damon Lindelof. But let's lay it out, shall we? I watched every episode of Lost. The premiere, I was hooked. I slogged through all the seasons. There were episodes like, everyone points to the same episodes, Jack's tattoo and Nikki and Paulo, the jewel thieves. Those are episodes where I said, I'm going to stop watching this stupid show because they don't know where they're going. They're just treading water, even though they swore when this show started and all the mysteries that they had set up. The stupid mystery box concept, layering on all these mysteries with no end in sight and never paying them off. They swore they had an explanation for everything. So even when the episodes were terrible and I would swear to myself, I am never going to watch this show again. I have had my fill of this stupid show and I'm not watching it anymore. I would dutifully go back because my oldest kid, Luna, and I, we watched it together. We watched every episode of Lost together from start to finish. Even when we went on vacation, we would lay there in our hotel room, never missing an episode for fear of losing something. This is all before social media, so you had to watch it because the people at work were going to talk about it, the so-called water cooler effect. And I had friends at work that were very into Lost as much as I was. So we would watch it, and they swore up and down that they had answers, that it wasn't purgatory, that the people on the island weren't dead, that they weren't ghosts, that there was a concrete explanation. And as I sat watching that finale and seeing them all enter the church and them telling us, oh, no, they had to die one by one, and it wasn't until they were all dead that they could pass into heaven together. So technically, the island wasn't purgatory. And I went, if you watch the finale of Lost, there was all this convoluted mythology of Jacob and the man in black and two sons that were raised by a woman on the island and a magic jacuzzi that Jack had to pull the plug on and all the stuff that had built up to it. And I'll tell you, Lost was the most inventive, maddening, frustrating, engrossing television show I've ever watched. And I hung in there because of the promise of your divorced dad's picking you up for the weekend. I swear, if you wait on the curb with your bag, he's going to pick you up, even though dad never comes. And the answers that they gave, and I've gone back and I've watched Lost, the final ones. I've watched key ones, and I even watched some of those YouTube videos where they explain Lost in its entirety. And I'll tell you what, none of it is satisfying. It's not satisfying in any way. And that's very frustrating for all the hours. And, they gave free entertainment, Jeff. Yeah, I know. But they also promised a lot that they didn't give. It's the same thing that happened with Game of Thrones. And Damon Lindelof had nothing to do with Game of Thrones. I know that's not what we're talking about. But he worked on a lot of high-profile projects. And Lost was the big one where I just got really mad at this guy. Then the trailer for Prometheus, that boom, boom, and them running and the alien, and you're like, Ridley Scott is back after the horrible Alien versus Predator movies. Now we're going to get a proper Alien prequel, whatever that means. I can't wait. And then you go see it, and I love expensive sci-fi, where they have cool spacesuits and badass spaceships, and then they have vehicles that come out of the spaceships to run on the planet, and, you know, Idris Elba's a cigar-smoking space trucker like they were in the first film. And I went opening night, I took Luna, I took Austin, and other than a few good moments, and most notably the extraction scene in the surgical pod, there was so much of the movie where I was like, wait a minute. They greenlit this movie? They didn't stop and think that scientists wouldn't go onto a planet that they didn't know, that they would take precautions, that the reason that Alien works so well is that the characters in it are blue collar. They're not scientists. They're just there for a paycheck. They tell you over and over again they're there for a paycheck. And it's Ash, the science robot from Weyland-Yutani, that gets them all into trouble because he kind of gets what's going on, and he's been programmed by the corporation to take advantage and get the specimen home at any cost, no matter the human cost. That makes total sense. But the characters in Prometheus are scientists. They are men and women of fact, and they're supposed to know all that. So when that one guy just starts playing with an alien, like the one that rears up like a cobra, you're taken right out of the movie. Because nobody would do that. Doesn't he touch the black oil and like rub it on his fingers? And you're like, wait a minute. No scientist would do this. They did it in the same nonsense in the last Alien movie, where they walked out onto an alien planet and were invaded by microbes. Like, yeah, no, I'm Buzz Lightyear, man. You keep your helmet on at all costs. But that was Damon Lindelof. I mean, he's the famous writer of the character who wouldn't run right or left, but instead ran straight as something was falling on them. Oy vey, I got so mad at Prometheus. So much potential. And it's just marred by stupid writing decisions. And Lindelof is front and center for that. Didn't he write Tomorrowland, or have something to do with Tomorrowland? One of the worst studio films I have ever seen. This weird movie masquerading as some sort of climate message and do-good message, and instead it's the most cynical, evil piece of crap movie I've ever seen, where the characters don't ever do anything logical. Every sequence in Tomorrowland, I did a whole episode on it, every sequence in Tomorrowland has you scratching your head at the actions of the characters. You're just bewildered. Why are they doing what they're doing? Why is it happening? That's not how people, normal people, react. And I get taken out of it. And when the spaceship takes off from the middle of the Eiffel Tower, you're like, well, now everybody knows. The jig is up and the secret is out. Then they just think, oh, it's so stupid. Have you seen Tomorrowland? Do you know what the plot of Tomorrowland is? The plot is a young boy invents a machine that predicts the day the world will end. So instead of working towards a common goal of fixing those problems, they banish the boy from the scientist utopia, and he spends the rest of his life trying to get back in. That's what I remember the plot. I may have missed a little tweak here and there, but that's what I got out of it. And it's completely bewildering that men of science, men of fact, men of passion would banish somebody for an idea that somehow scares them instead of embracing the idea and how to fix it. Oh, Damon Lindelof. Oh, no. There are times I have sat down to watch one of your projects with my arms crossed, and you just make the worst writing decisions I have ever witnessed on screen. It's a wonder you didn't write Batman v Superman with that stupid Martha line. I mean, that's the level of idiocy we're talking about. I saw him do an interview on the movies that made us, and he's in a living room with original one-sheets for Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi. He's got Pee-wee's bike, and I'm jealous. There's a guy living my dream life of writing these big projects and collecting the most iconic pieces of pop culture from my childhood as well. So yeah, there's a little professional jealousy between me and Damon Lindelof, and also the idea that here's a guy at the top of his game And he's writing movies with these ridiculous moments in them, and they shouldn't be there. Just stop and rewrite it again. And if the movie's not ready to start filming, stop and rewrite it and stop doing mediocre garbage. So, that being said, a 10-minute diatribe on why I can't stand this guy. When I found out he was given one of the greatest pop culture properties in history, I was so, I was defeated, because he's not going to do it justice. He has no business anywhere near it, and I'm not going to watch it, because I'm not going to watch one of my favorite comic book properties fall victim to the Lindelof mystery box. I just can't do it. So, it is with a lot of trepidation and reading a couple of online reviews and a singular moment that said to me, I should probably watch it. I should probably sit down and watch all the 9 episodes of Watchmen. 9 hours. Now, I was going to give him 1 or 2, and if they were typical Lindelof lunacy, I was going to not watch the rest and say to myself, you gave it a shot, you're not blind, you looked at something, edit, you looked at something, and you gave it a shot, you gave it a chance. So I got the first episode of Watchmen, what they were calling woke men, which I didn't quite understand. After watching it, I do. I get the point of view of the people who didn't like it. The first episode of the HBO Watchmen series, which bewilderingly is not an adaptation of the actual comic book, but is instead a sequel set 30 years after the events of the original Watchmen. I don't know how to even say this. It was one of the finest hours of television I've ever seen. I had a snack while I was watching it, but it may as well have been crow. I ate so much crow during that first episode. Watchmen opens with a silent movie and a young child watching a reveal of good guy, bad guy in masks. And you just know it's going to set up the story that's going to come of who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, and don't believe what you see. And the kid then is smuggled out of Oklahoma, where they're having a race war. The Klan has showed up and is killing all of the African American people in the streets. And the kid is left in a field with an infant. And it cuts to modern day. And in the modern day, we see a cop, an African American cop, pulling over a white guy. And there's something weird going on, because the cop's wearing a mask and he doesn't have a gun. He has to have permission from his staff sergeant to get his gun released from his car. And I thought, these are good ideas. These are really well thought out ideas. Now, knowing Lindelof, they're never going to pay off. So I was really hesitant. But the writing was so good. And the main character, Angela Abar, she's a African-American cop who goes by the name of Sister Knight, I think her name is. She is a superhero, basically a vigilante cop. And we are introduced to this new world where the events of the Watchmen happened, the Keene Act happened, and all of the events of the comic book, it's kind of referencing the movie as far as the story a little bit, but it is a direct sequel to the Watchmen comic. And we know that because in the first episode, baby squids fall from the sky, and it's treated as a normal occurrence. The squids fall, and then they melt into the pavement. And I'll tell you what, I was hooked. I was completely hooked. At the end of the first episode, police chief that we have, been told to like and respect, played by Don Johnson, is killed. He hangs himself, and Louis Gossett Jr. is there, and we're not really certain what's happening. There's a sequence where it looks as if the chief is driving the owl ship, and the HBO Watchmen series is at once familiar and at the same time just different enough to keep you watching. We have all of the characters are here. There is a Rorschach-like character called Looking Glass. Sister Night is kind of the night owl of the show. She has a secret lair with her costume, and it's hanging just like Dan Drieberg hung up his owl costume. She has a special vehicle she drives around. Dr. Manhattan has fled to Mars and has never returned. And the cops are in a race war, and the white supremacists are around. And it's designed to be inflammatory. And it is. But it's inflammatory in so many ways that were right. It's preachy, and yet I never felt as if I was being preached to. Instead, it's a slow burn. If this had been a movie, this had been a mess. But because it's 9 hours, you get to slowly marinate in this world. And we're going to be introduced to all these characters. We're going to be introduced to Lady True, is that her name? Some of the details elude me, even though I'll tell you, I enjoyed Watchmen so much that I watched it twice. This is a podcast 18 hours in the making. 18 hours. And I'll tell you what kept me watching. The first was the treatment of the world building was so on the button of a world after Watchmen, where Vietnam has become the 51st state. They have a celebration of the day Dr. Manhattan liberated Vietnam from the Viet Cong. They have phone booths where people pay to send their prayers up to Dr. Manhattan as if God is listening to a payphone. We meet Laurie, who used to be Silk Spectre and is now a grizzled, jaded cop, and she has assumed the mantle of the comedian, her father who raped her mother. I mean, it's all in there. Oh my God. Every episode had so many... if you've listened to the show at all, I don't like the word Easter egg. I like the word reference. There's a lot of Easter eggs in the show. Nah, let's not say that. Let's just say that because this is Watchmen, there's going to be a lot of nods to the comic book. And when they're telling you, they really make you wait for the actual origins of these characters. And when you find out, for example, Looking Glass's origin and how he was in New Jersey the night of 11/2. They call it 11/2 instead of 9/11 because it happened on November 2nd, the night the squid appeared. And you see the squid and the squid attack and what it did to people and how it's made Looking Glass completely paranoid his whole life. And he wears this silver reflecting fabric because it's supposed to block out psionic waves. Because remember, in the comic book, they put psionic waves in the squid so that if you weren't directly killed by it, you would have nightmares for the rest of your life. I mean, it's all in there. These people, and I'm going to give Lindelof the bulk of the credit because I'm sure he had to fight for all of these details because this show is so dense and so woven that if you're a casual viewer, you might enjoy it. But this show is made for people who are going to stick with it and not take your eyes off the screen. Oh my God, it was so good. And I haven't even gotten to the best character. The best character is Jeremy Irons, who's playing Ozymandias, who spends 90% of the show locked in a prison that we don't know where it's at. We don't know why he's there. He's got clones living with him, and he kills these clones, and then he plucks new clones from the river, and he grows them in a machine, and why is he catapulting them into the sky, and what is happening? And I'll tell you, Irons is chewing the scenery. Oh my God, was it good. Every time Jeremy Irons appears on screen, this is going to be a crazy comparison. It's like in Silence of the Lambs, when Hannibal Lecter reappears. You're like, oh, that's that guy again. That guy that just holds you watching. You cannot look away. And what's great about Watchmen is that with these characters, we're finding out secrets about them. We're finding out who's telling the truth and who's lying and what is their motives. But it's not like Dr. Evil, who's like, I'm going to steal the moon. Okay, you're going to put a cannon on, like, we're going to put a cannon on the moon, like where Dr. Evil explains his whole plan like a James Bond villain. We have no idea what the plan is until the very end. It's the same exact echo of the original Watchmen, where Ozymandias says, when I plan to do it, do you think I'd tell you my master stroke? I'm not a Republic serial villain. I wouldn't tell you what I was planning to do if there was any chance you could affect its outcome. I did it 35 minutes ago. And then Night Owl cannot believe what he's looking at. It's that kind of thing of, oh, no. The bad guy's not going to explain what the plan is. Edit. And because the bad guy is altruistic, because the bad guy is not a bad guy. Because the bad guy thinks what they're doing is for the good of humanity. It's the same egotism as Ozymandias in the first one. And I gave it away. I'm going to have to put spoilers on this because we're blowing it out of the water. Lady True's plan is insane, but it's not the only plan. There are two factions moving towards the same plan at the same time using different techniques. And only Lady True is really pulling all the strings. She's the smartest person on the show. Well, she should be, because she's Ozymandias' daughter. Every reveal was just, I was so into this show. You'd have to be, because 18 hours, I could have watched 9 complete movies off my shelf, and instead, I spent the time watching Watchmen twice. 2 times. I loved Angela Abar's character. She curses. She's a badass. I bought it hook, line, and sinker when she's taking these people down, because when you finally get her origin, you get why she is the way she is. Fantastic character development. This is a textbook example of character development and cause and effect, where the characters are in a situation and how they get out of their predicament is something that you have already seen because it was set up earlier in the story. And there's a lot of setup effects, setup resolution, and that's the kind of writing that gets me really excited. And I shared Watchmen with Luna and Austin, and they liked it as much as I did, because it's so satisfying of how it all meshes together at the end. When it came time for the show to end, although as Dr. Manhattan says, nothing ever really ends. Not like Star Wars saying no one's ever really gone. Nothing ever really ends. I was sad that it was leaving, but also gratified in knowing that there's no way to do another one of these. This is one and done. And Lindelof agreed and did not sign with HBO for a second series. Which is the greatest decision ever, because you could probably, if you were paid enough money, sit down and come up with something. But it's never going to be as satisfying as what they've put together. And there's a device I use in my books, because my books involve time travel, where something happens on page 17, and you're not really sure what it is, because you're not going to find out till page 50 when a time travel event has occurred, and that's the reason page 17 occurred. They do this again and again in Watchmen, where Lady True buys a farmhouse for a meteorite. We don't know what's happening. We won't find that out till the last episode. And guess what? When we find out why she bought that farmhouse, I bought it 100%. It was stellar storytelling. I know this edit. I know this sounds like hyperbole, like it couldn't be this good, but it actually was very good. I'm such a fan of the comic book that when Lindelof finally goes to the source material to tell side stories or an origin story, he tells the origin story of Hooded Justice, who is a side character in the book, barely makes an appearance, but is in the auxiliary materials that appeared at the end of each comic, where, as a kid, you skipped right over that because you wanted to get to the story. But as an adult, you went back and read all that because it was the only way to get more Watchmen. Oh, this is supplemental stuff. I need to read this stuff. And you find out about Hooded Justice. And the story that they tell in the Watchmen show on HBO about Hooded Justice was one of the finest hours of television I've ever seen, about a young man trying to find his way, angry at the world, and just beset by characters within the police force and his own wife and his family, and then having a child, and just really stellar storytelling. And then it all comes full circle where he's trying to battle Cyclops, and they've got mind control, and that's going to come in to play later. And Cyclops also references the one-eyed squid, and we see Ozymandias with the squid a couple of times. We see the squid destroying New York. We see why the squids are falling, and where's Dr. Manhattan been, and what is Ozymandias doing in this castle. And when it's all finally doled out to us, oh boy, Damon Lindelof, you pulled it off, man. I have to take back what I said at the beginning of this show, because the storytelling on Watchmen was astoundingly good. I was jealous I didn't write it myself. I wish I'd been a part of that team to write Watchmen, the TV show, to play with those toys, to tell a new story in this world that felt just as good as the old story. And we're talking about Alan freaking Moore here. Alan Moore. And these guys had a huge burden to overcome, telling a story in Alan Moore's world that was going to equal Alan Moore, because he doesn't like when you tell stories on the watch. I didn't read any of that after Watchmen or before Watchmen, whatever those comics were. I don't care about that. I knew they were mediocre. This had me so nervous, and each episode had me watching further. And then there's even supplemental stuff to watch, to look at online, that further explains. Because I thought, when I first saw it, I'm like, well, they don't have cell phones, and that's a cop-out, because, cell phones, it's hard to tell stories with cell phones, because two characters can just call each other and say, here's the plan, here's what's going on. It's why the characters are always running out of cell service, or there's a EMP pulse that blocks the cell service, or all that, right? So this world, there's no cell phones. Why do they have cell phones? Well, you find out that they did have cell phones, but it was outlawed because they feared it was going to bring more squids into their world. It makes total sense. Total unbelievable sense is what it makes. Looking Glass's alarm, where the squids come from. There's only one plot thread I could find that they didn't pursue, and that is a character that only appears once called the Lube Man. And if you've seen the show, you know who I'm talking about. He's really cool because he only shows up once, and Angela's reaction to him is the audience's reaction to him of what the F is that? But you find out in the supplementals who Lube Man was, and it makes total sense. The supplementals were great. Why Angela has a giant Dr. Manhattan vibrator. What happened to Dan Dreberg? So many little details. Laurie has an owl as a pet because she misses Night Owl. Ozymandias, you think he's in Eden, and even he's upset with Eden and wants out. Well, where is Eden? When the reveal of that was stellar. I was so excited at each new revelation and how the mysteries kept piling up, but they would reveal one and then add another, reveal one, then add another, and then make you wait and reveal a big one. And why is there an elephant? And what's Lady True's true mission? Why is she building the millennial clock? What does it do? What's happening? If you haven't watched Watchmen and you've listened this far, you shouldn't. You should watch it. It is satisfying. Yes, it's very it's full of race issues, which would normally to me be very tiring. I don't like being preached to. This one didn't feel that way because it's an alternative universe. They can get away with a lot, the same way that Star Trek would always do this. It's another planet. It's another society. It's not Earth. I get all that. It's heavy-handed at times, yes, but the heavy-handedness works towards telling the story. And you get why people are mad and what they're upset about and why the cops are wearing masks and why they can't have guns and why are they collecting watch batteries. But it's going to take you 9 hours to get to all these mysteries. They're not going to be just given to you right away. And that's part of the fun. And Laurie's character is so good. There's a moment where Laurie knows the plan, and she goes, and she's telling somebody the plan, and the person she's telling to says, yes, that's the plan. And then a trap door, like a vintage trap door, sends her falling. And you're like, what the hell is happening? Oh, there's an Ozymandias statue where he looks old. Why is that there? Well, you find out, and the answer is pretty darn cool. If you haven't seen Watchmen, you should watch it right now. You should have already watched it before you listen to this episode, but you'll see. And I'll just say, Damon Lindelof, I apologize. And if I meet you at Comic-Con, I'm going to tell you that I had an amazing time watching The Watchmen. And now Josie is here.
No, Mom, again?
No, you have to text her that we're leaving.
Bye.
So, The Watchmen is great. Fantastic storytelling. The reveal of where Dr. Manhattan is was the single piece of information that had me hooked. It did not take away from my enjoyment of the show, knowing that reveal. It actually made it better. And this is a show that was actually 10 times better on the second viewing because I was able to see the clues, see the breadcrumbs, see the trail that had been laid, and follow it even better the second time. But if you don't have 18 hours to invest, I get it. I just was so into this show that I needed to watch it twice. I might even watch it a third time just to see if I missed anything. So check out The Watchmen. If you see Damon Lindelof and you know him, let him know that I am a convert. Now, I didn't watch any of his other shows. I think he did The Leftovers. I didn't watch that. There were some other projects I missed, but I did watch The Watchmen. And I'm kicking myself because at Comic-Con, they had one of the Dr. Manhattan phone booths on display. You could take your picture with it. And I didn't because I'm a dumbass who said, I'm not supporting this show. Oh, sorry, Captain America's here. Language. I said, I'm not supporting the show. And I was wrong. And I've eaten a lot of crow. And I will eat more crow when I watch it a third time. So check out The Watchmen. I can't recommend it highly enough. Thank you, Hindle, for figuring out a way for me to watch The Watchmen. I appreciate that very much. And we'll see you on the next episode of
91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?
So why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?